Oh, yeah, I tried to work on my facial expressions.
Okay. Ready, Sean?
Yes, sir.
6 o'clock, I'm going to call this meeting to order. Would you join me with the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, can I get a roll call, please?
Mayor Rao,
Present. I'm here.
Councilman Rao,
That's your present.
Councilman Hunter. Here. Councilman Laverie. He was gonna try to join us by Zoom, but it doesn't look like he's on. Councilman Fitzsimons.
Present.
Okay. Only thing I got to say on the opening remarks, item B on the consent agenda will be tabled. We don't have that ready because of the computer problems we've had, so we won't have that on there tonight. Are we in compliance with the open meeting law?
Yes.
Public comment. Do we have any public comment regarding anything on our agenda tonight? Anybody online? Nope. Okay. Let's go to the consent agenda. Move for approval.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Items for discussion, possible action. Approve or deny submission of fiscal year 2020-21 audit report to the State Department of Taxation.
I don't know what, I
Mr.
don't know what,
MacArthur.
yeah, I don't know what's normally led into if I need to say anything, but I think I'll turn that time over to Mr. MacArthur.
Mr. MacArthur? Yep. Need one for. Thank you, sir.
Appreciate being with you here tonight. I do have several things to go through with you. Time-wise, am I good for 15, 20 minutes? So to begin with, I want to go inside this financial statement, this audit report with you, okay? Initially, I need to take you to it's page 2 inside the financial statement. It's titled Independent Auditor's Report.
I couldn't hear the page.
Page 2. Do I need to is that better? Okay, sorry. So our responsibility as auditors is to audit the financial information of the the city. And audit the financial statement. On this particular page, Independent Auditor's Report, the paragraphs have some headings. Just want to touch on a couple of these paragraphs. The second paragraph says management's responsibilities for the financial statements. So the financial statements are the responsibility of the management of the city. They're not the financial statements of the auditor. The auditor audits the financials. Our responsibility when we do an audit is to obtain audit evidence, financial evidence to support what's in the financial statement. Opinions, the bottom of the page. It's plural because there's many different financials in here at the bottom of page 2. Where it says opinions, it says, in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the respective financial position of the governmental activities, the business type activities, each major fund, and the aggregating fund information of the city of Caliente, Nevada as of June 30th, 2021. So based on the audit evidence we obtained, we believe the financial statements are fairly stated. It talks about government activities, business type activities in each major funds because there's so many funds in here. Government activities are all of the funds except for the utilities. Business activities are all the utility type funds, including, I guess there's solid waste and mosquito abatement also are deemed business type funds because they're fee for service type funds. So the information in here is fairly stated. From there, I want to go to the very back of the report and deal with some things in the back of the report. As part of the audit, and I want to go to page 137. I'll give you a minute to get to page 137. State statutes requires that when an audit be performed, the audit be performed in accordance with government auditing standards. There are different types of standards under which an audit can be performed. And here in our state, it has to be according to government auditing standards. When a government auditing standards audit is performed, the auditor is supposed to also issue a letter concerning what's called internal control and then compliance with law and regulation. Internal control is the checks and balances the town has in place to make sure assets and liabilities are managed properly. So this, on this page, this report, page 137, I'm supposed to provide to you comments concerning internal controls and then compliance with law and regulation. And so in this particular year, we have some comments on internal controls. So let me just take you to those comments. They start on page 139. Now, it's my intention not to go through these in detail with you because these comments are identical to the comments we had last year. Okay? If you recall, last year the audit wasn't completed and brought to you until almost April 10th, I believe, in that time frame. Okay? So 2.5 months later, the year ends that we're auditing right now, that I'm here to present to you tonight. So last year we had a comment concerning what's called financial period close. That's where the books are supposed to be basically closed each month, okay? So that didn't happen for the year ended 2020, and it didn't happen for the year ended 2021. The reason it's important the books are closed every month is so that you can get monthly financial statements and make sure everything's reconciled. So we show here that the criteria, what really took place, why it happened, the effect, recommendations, and then views of responsible officials, which would be the city, okay, here members of the city, management. So I just want to read this last paragraph with you. City management agrees with the findings and recommendation. Now, the recommendation we have in here is to make sure there's training for both the clerk and the deputy clerk, okay? Views of responsible officials. This is the response to the findings. City management agrees with the findings and recommendations. In July of 2021, the city clerk resigned. So she resigned, right at the end of the year last year. The city filled a vacant clerk position in August of 21 with an individual who is a certified public accountant with an extensive accounting background. Okay, this is your response as to what are we doing to take care of these issues. The new clerk has received training on software used by the city. Now I realize, as that's stated, the training's limited to a certain extent because a lot of it still has to be long distance. I tend to go with a first name basis. So Craig is getting what he can, as he can, through phone or over the internet or whatever he can to get some training with the Cassell system, okay? And he's doing that on a regular basis. And so this is the city's response to the recommendations, okay? So let me go to the second one. What's on, the next comment was on page 140. So in the prior year and also in this year, the June 30, 21 year, we found posting errors in the books where revenues didn't get posted to the correct revenue accounts and expenditures didn't get posted to the correct expenditure accounts. The city has multiple funds and some expenses got posted to the wrong fund. And so as part of the audit, we made adjustments to get them in the right fund. And rather than go through all of this with you, the views of responsible officials at the bottom of the page is very similar to the comment on the first page. It's just this one adds the deputy clerk into this because the deputy clerk is tied into expenditure processing and the responsibilities over that too. And then the next comment on page 141 talks about financial reporting. That's the ability to produce financial statements and bring them to the city council on a regular basis. Well, technically, you got to be able to do the first comment here of close the books every month, make sure the expenses and revenues are in the right place before you can bring in a monthly financial statement, okay? And so I know we've discussed these things before. We knew this was a problem, but the steps you've taken are going to alleviate the problem, okay? And those steps is and Craig might feel uncomfortable with, but you've hired someone who has the ability and the skills to take care of all these problems, okay? And that's going to really make a big difference in alleviating these issues. Then I need to go from there. So there's three comments there, and there's a comment that's not written in here that I am going to bring up to you tonight. Maybe now's the time to bring it up, okay? So when we look at the financial statements, we use a term called materiality, meaning if this is off $100, does Dan care about it? No, because I'm not going to go spend $500 to find 100. If there's a $100 mistake in here, then we're not going to chase that. We gear our testing to make sure we look at the big picture, not the little small stuff. One of the things that we came across this particular year, and it was a problem, I don't know if you remember last year, but the PERS reports for 2020 weren't filed on time for 6 of the months. Well, this year, as we went through the PERS reports, we found that the PERS reports were sent in and filed on time, but there's mistakes on the reports. For about 4 employees, looked like they had a consistent mistake every month on the reports went in for them, okay? What we found is inside the system, and let me back up. What the problem is, there wasn't enough money sent into PERS to cover the contribution requirement. I'm going to round the numbers, it's around $17,000, okay? The books of the system, however, the Cassell system, it had recorded the liability, and so this financial has the liabilities in here, even though they weren't paid. We didn't put this in here as a internal control comment because it's $17,000, it's not $170,000. If I were to spread that $17,000 across all the funds for each one of the individual funds, it'd be small, even though I should say the liability and the expense is in the financial, it's just the payment was never made. That means the employees don't have the credits to their name at PERS. So my recommendation is that there needs to be amended reports filed with PERS. I did bring a worksheet with me, and I thought maybe it'd be better if we just emailed this to Craig, but we did a worksheet to show all the employees that were affected and what the dollar differences were, so amended reports could be sent into PERS and pay the additional money. So it's in the books as a liability. It's not like we're going to add an expense in here. So, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I have been in contact with PERS over the last several months because I knew that was an issue, and we're working on it.
Okay.
But I would love to see that.
Okay, so Craig's already ahead of it, okay? So this concerned us a bit, okay, because you know, we make mistakes too. Because the reports were late in the prior year, where there was 6 months were late, we went back and looked at the prior year in more detail. And it looks like even the prior year, it was short paid between maybe $5,000 and $6,000. And so we think the 2 years ought to be looked at. Now, normally what happens is PERS comes in like every 3 years, and they do on-site audits. That hasn't happened, but PERS has got their issues with COVID and short staffing too, and so they haven't been here, and this is just to make sure that your employees get the proper credits with PERS. So these worksheets have both years on it, okay? We think, you know, when we get into it, it might be a little bit different, but just so you're aware of that, okay? Now, I'm gonna go to page 142. So we're supposed to bring up comments concerning violations of the law. And there's basically three items that we need to talk about. One is there are some budget violations in the financial statement this year. There's actually 5 of them. Now that's unusual for the city because usually we don't see violations like this here at the city. There was money here to spend, but the budget adjustments towards the end of the year, like in, I'll say June of 21, no budget adjustments were brought before the council to make changes. I'll give you one example that you'll all be familiar with, and that is when the county came to you and needed some additional dispatch money. I remember having a conversation, I think I might have even been here in April when that was discussed. Was the money here? Yeah, the money was here, but there was supposed to be a second step of amending the budget so that the money was in the proper line to spend it, okay? Well, that didn't happen before the end of the year, okay? I'm not gonna throw anybody under the bus, but I was led to believe that that'd be done by June 30th, and it obviously didn't happen, okay? So there's several expenditure issues in here like that, and I'm gonna go through them with you just so you're aware. And then I know that Craig's gonna do some things in the current year with the budget to make sure you can start getting budget actual comparisons. He and Stacy have been discussing this so that you'll have a better feel and we'll be able to alleviate these kind of problems. There is one fund this year that has a negative fund balance at the end of the year, and that's the solid waste fund. Now that's technically not an NRS violation, but it is upside down. Part of the reason it's upside down, meaning it has a negative equity, is I'm going to go back to PERS. You know, the city has to make payments to PERS every year, and you're short on the payment, but there is now an accounting requirement that came into consideration about 5 years ago, where the city is supposed to put on their financial statement the city's share of the unfunded PERS liability, okay? Which means if PERS has $10 billion in assets, but they're gonna have to pay $12 billion out, so they're $2 billion short because they don't have enough money to make the payment, that means they have a liability. This accounting requirement says that that liability has to be shown on all the financial statements of all the local governments throughout the entire state based on a pro rata basis, okay? So inside the solid waste fund, there's about $40,000+ that shows in here as a liability inside the fund on the financial statement, which follows generally accepted accounting principles. But I'm going to say this, inside the state statute, there's a statute that says if the city makes their contributions to PERS, they have zero obligation to pay any of the PERS debt. So on one hand, there's a statute that says it's not your liability. On the other hand, there's a statute that says the financial statements have to be prepared following generally accepted accounting principles, which forces the liability to be on your books. Does that make sense? I don't make the rules, okay?
Read them.
Okay, but that's the main reason the solid waste fund is negative, but I do want to talk about that too a little bit tonight because it's a concern. If you stay on page 142 at the very bottom of the page, there's the last paragraph. It says quarterly economic survey. This was an issue in the prior year. This is in the 20 year, and it was also an issue in the 21 year. There's a requirement to send a report into the state on a quarterly basis saying, here's where we are. You give them some cash balances, you give them some fund balances. I know Craig's working on this. I know he and Stacy have been talking about how to deal with this. They weren't sent in for the year ended June of 21 for the 4 quarters that we're aware of, that we've seen. Okay? Do you want to comment on that at all?
Yeah, so there were some reports that were sent in. I believe they were sent in late. And then I guess there's a bigger topic to go with this, which is there's a show cause case out there where we have to show cause why certain reports, this is a UEC, that's a separate one. Sorry, that's a different issue. But on the quarterly economic survey, when I sent in the first quarter of this new fiscal year, it was the first time I had done that report, and I went back and looked at how it was done previously and made a few adjustments and submitted it with a note to Kelly Gramman at the State Department of Tax saying, I know this is wrong, but I need some guidance. And since then, we sent in our most recent quarter, and I discussed with her going back to the beginning of 2021, I resubmitted all of our quarterly economic surveys so that she would have the accurate financial data on those reports. So she has all of those up to date as of now with correct financial numbers.
Okay, so Craig's already taken corrective action on this because part of this would be the city has to send in a corrective action plan, and so he's already taken the step to do the corrective action on this item right here. So there were a problem for the 2021 year. He's already taken the action to solve the problem for the year we're in right now, 2022, and he's filed corrective action for 21. So I'm sure Kelly's pretty happy with that then, okay? Okay. The next few pages on this are required to be put in the financial, but I really don't see a need to go through these with you because none of these relate to any kind of compliance issues. There's a follow-up of progress from last year's findings and last year's recommendations, but because they're just similar to the prior 2 years, I don't see a need to waste your time with them tonight. So from there, I want to go into some financial pages and just, if I could, to just discuss a few financial issues with you. So I would like to turn to I'm going to go to page 65 first. So page 65, and I guess when you open the book up, it has page 64 and 65. They're side by side. So both of these represent the general fund of the town at the end of the year. I want to start on page 65 first. In the middle of the page, you see it starts at the top, says revenue. Well, not the very top, but where the numbers start, it's revenues, and it shows the expenditures. And I just want to go to the expenditures and have you look at general government. It shows a budget of $493,943. You see spent $565,000, so it's a negative variance of $71,000. So that's an issue as it relates to budget compliance. Under public safety, it shows $10,598 over budget. That public safety item is driven by the $30,000 that went into the county, okay, for the dispatch costs, okay? And then I'm going to get into that $71,000 with you in just a minute, but I want you to look at the bottom of the page here, the fund balance. So if you look at the bottom 2 lines and you go to the far right-hand column, you see the second line from the bottom at $113,587. That was the fund balance of the general fund at June of 19. June of 20, it was $147,000. On paper, it shows the fund balance for the general fund to be $43,000 at the end of 21. That's honestly the lowest I've seen the fund balance in several years. But I'm going to get way bean counter here with you for a minute. I have to explain this to you. I want you to now look on page 64. And I want you to look about 2/3 of the way down the page where it says deferred inflows of resources. And I want you to see this line item, the second one down, that says unavailable revenue, grant revenue, $77,000. That normally would be sitting in fund balance. And if I added the 77,000 to 43,000, you'd look a lot stronger. But accounting requirements indicate for a governmental fund, if the money is not received within 60 days after the end of the year, then you can't show it as revenue or in fund balance. And there was some grant revenue that didn't come into you until way late, almost 6 months into the year. And so we have to show it as unavailable revenue at the end of the year. So what I'm trying to say is that you look at this and you'll say, oh, wow, fund balance is way down. But if that revenue would have shown up, 3 or 4 months earlier, it would be okay. And I just want you to see that so you don't get misled that, oh, we're in serious trouble.
Does that grant revenue come in every year?
The grant revenue?
Yeah.
No. This is related to the depot restoration grant, okay? And so there's expenses that were incurred, but the revenues didn't come in, but you still have to put the accounts payable on the books. And this is what's, you always want to match things. One of the principles in accounting is to match your revenue with your expense. Sorry, I'm talking to a fellow CPA over here, but in a government setting, there's just a real strange thing where you have to put the expense on the books. You're going to get reimbursed from the grants to pay for it. But if that reimbursement doesn't come in within 60 days after the end of the year, you can't record it as revenue. It's just a governmental accounting requirement. In normal business, you always record the revenue and the expense so they're in the same time frame. Here, it's different. Okay? Okay. So let me go from there. I want to take you to page 67 and 68. And am I okay still for some time here? Okay, all right. Okay. So I want to go on page 67, and I've just got some things I want to highlight here, basically under City Hall, General Administration. It's the second section down here, and you can see that it shows that this particular area is over budget by $112,000 when you look at the budget. When I look at this, I believe two things. I believe that the budget that we put together was wrong, because if you look at salaries and wages, actual column, you can see that it's almost the middle column there. It shows wages at $61,000. You follow the line over and you look at 2020, the wages were $60,000. They're within $1,000 each year, but the budget is $36,000. So we looked back to see what had been put in the budget, and there was one position, and it's the janitor. Okay? His wages should have been some budget for his wages in here, but the request was to not put his wages in here, was to put it in other funds and other departments. Well, technically, a lot of what he does is here in City Hall. So that created a budget problem. And then I want to go to service and supplies. The budget was $93,000. Look on the same line item and go to 2020. Well, $132,000 was spent in 2020. Okay? In 2021, it's $159,000. So it shows the actual expenses went up almost $30,000. But when you get and dig into that, the extra money went to Town Cloud, which is the new software that you discussed. And Town Cloud, the payment was $38,000. Okay? So I just want to see why these budget issues exist the way they do. So that Town Cloud was never in the budget. There was never any budget adjustment made. It could have been, because there could have been some modifications to the budget itself. It just didn't happen. Okay? Would it be inappropriate to talk? Maybe now's not the time to talk about Town Cloud.
Probably would be
Appropriate or inappropriate?
appropriate, but it's fine. I'm just teasing.
I'll move on. Okay?
You can say it. Just kidding.
Well, right now, the way this financial has been put together, so when you buy something like that, then you normally take that expense and you add it to the capital asset listing, okay? At this point, that hasn't been added to the capital asset listing. You know, maybe now's not the time for that. Okay, I've opened Pandora's box. It's too late now, isn't it? So we talked about this during the budget workshop. It's been, what, 9 months ago? And maybe what would or would not happen with this, okay? So right now, it's my understanding that you may not go down that trail with that, okay? I don't think you haven't seen anything on it to my knowledge at this point yet,
Got an email just the other day, but no, still no.
okay? And so unless you continue going down that route, there's no point in adding that to the asset listing, because if it's never ultimately going to become an asset, then it's not going to be added. And so to take the conservative approach, which is what accountants do, it hasn't been added to the asset listing at this point. I guess that's all I need to say at this point, okay? Okay, from there, I want to go to page 73 and 74. So 73 and 74 are the sewer utility fund, okay? I needed to point out just really one thing on here. The sewer utility fund has, on page 73, look at the top of the page, usually the first line is always cash. So this fund doesn't have any cash that is not earmarked for a specific purpose. It has accounts receivable, and the next line below it says restricted cash, shows $127,000. That money is all restricted because of the debt that the sewer fund has, okay? So it technically doesn't have any operating cash. Because of that, on page 74, okay, top of the page, third line from the bottom, it says due to other funds. It shows the fund borrowed $64,000 from the electrical fund. Last year, that loan was $39,000. So that means there has been a need to take more operating cash as a loan from the electrical fund, just so you're aware of that. To me, all right? The reason the $127,000 of restricted cash is there is because on the same page, on page 74, it says non-current liabilities. The second line down says revenue bond payable. There's a few of them, $758,000 in bonds. That's why that money is restricted. When the bonds are all paid off, which is going to be a while, that restriction goes away. But I feel I need to point that out to you, and I'm not here to talk about raising rates or anything, but that comes into play because there's no cash, operating cash, okay? Okay, from there, I'd like to go to page 79. So page 79 is the electrical fund. It actually has a budget violation in it. It's right in the middle of the page. It shows total operating expenses, budget and actual. It's got a budget violation of $869. It's really nothing compared to the fund as a whole. One of the reasons that exists is that, so Bert Mangum, you know, he's retired now. The city purchased some PERS time for him, or some PERS credits for him. It was several $1,000s. That PERS credit ends up in this general administration line item. It's about the fourth line down under operating expenses. So inside of general administration is this PERS buyout. It wasn't the full dollar amount that was paid to him because that gets allocated over all the utilities, but a significant portion goes into this fund because it's one of the largest utilities. And I think that was a good thing to do that, but that's why this has the budget violation in it, okay? Just so you're aware of that.
And is that only because we didn't do a budget augmentation? Is that one of the things we were talking about earlier?
Yeah,
Okay.
had there been a budget adjustment made, which can be done, and honestly, for a utility fund, it's very easy to do that. That can even be done on the final economic survey that's filed after the end of the year with the Department of Taxation. So that's one that that if something like that happens this year, Craig can do that even if it's after June 30th for a utility fund, okay? Same situation though, all right? So page 82. I guess I want to talk about 81 and 82. From an auditor's point of view, this is the fund that I'm most concerned about, in that this is the fund that has the negative equity that I'm talking about. If you look at the bottom of page 81, the first column, it just shows down there net position at the very bottom of the page. That's basically, you know, equity in the fund or equity in the business, and so it's negative $44,173. But it's basically driven by this net pension liability I talked about. If you just follow up that column, you see deferred inflows of resources. It shows 17,507. It's all related to pensions. A couple of more lines, you see net pension liability at $40,488. And you go up under deferred outflows, you see another number that's related to pension charges of $14,112. If I were able to take all that out, the way they net, it would pretty much alleviate that negative balance. But even then, if I go over to page 82, there's just some concerns here, and I see that Grant's not here tonight, but right in the middle of the page, it shows operating income loss. So the actual loss for the year is $64,609 right there in the actual column. So there was a budget to have a loss of $25,000 for the year. It ended up being $64,000. How do I want to say this? If we look under the salaries and wages, I know that about a year and a half ago to 2 years ago, the State Division of Forestry came in and changed their policy. It used to be that you used to use people from the honor camp to help with this. They're not available, or if they are, they're at a very high price. And you can see what's happened is that there's a budget of $31,000 for wages. Well, it's $57,000 this year. Last year it was $50,000. So I just see that as a continuing problem, and it's just a concern that I have for this fund. Then during this year, the collection truck or garbage truck broke down. There was $6,000 or $8,000 of costs had to be paid to fix it. In addition, during that time frame, I believe you had to hire or pay the Lincoln County system to come in and pick the trash up. And so that had a significant hit on the fund. So I'm just concerned because each year this fund balance just gets worse and worse and worse. So I don't know what the magic cure is, but hopefully we'll find one, okay? So that's one I just think that could continue to go that direction. There may be a need to spend some time in trying to deal with that problem. Then if I could go to page 86 and 87. So 86 and 87, it just shows you a summary of all of the smaller funds of the town, or of the city, I should say. And I really want to talk about just the bottom line on this page, the second line from the bottom all along this. It shows the total fund balance. And just look at the balances in each one of the funds and the stronger funds. And so you see the streets fund. It's the first column there. It shows a fund balance of $28,971. Parks and Recreation, $21,900. Now the room tax fund, $120,000. That's a pretty good chunk of money sitting in the room tax fund, which to me would be the fund that where if there were some budget change to be made, you could utilize that room tax fund that could have solved some of the budget issues that we're looking at from last year, okay? Beautification fund, really that's very specific use. The AA fees in municipal court, you really can't touch that. Meadow Valley Industrial Park's got $71,000 in it. That's the rental money coming in off the industrial park. That's money that's really available there for your use if you want to use it different ways or put it back into industrial park, wherever you want to put it. And then we get into some of the new funds. If we go on over here a little further, you see the fire department fund at $19,901. From my perspective, that's pretty normal depending on how things are going with the fire department. Special licensing fee, $190,000. Marijuana oversight emergency relief. Now, these are new funds that come into play this year. This is the first year they've really had money in them. That's because now you're starting to get money from the, not from the initial $50,000 payments they make, but from the reoccurring money coming in.
Right, there's supposed to be four, sorry. There's supposed to be four funds, right? There's the marijuana oversight, emergency relief, debt reduction, and capital improvement funds. But I only see two of the funds on here.
Okay, so the reason for that is if you look up on the upper left-hand corner of this page, upper left-hand corner. So this section is the special revenue funds. So the financials are broken up through the general fund of the city, then special revenue funds, and then I'm going to take you to debt service fund section and the capital projects fund, so you'll see them all in here.
Thank you.
And also, Meadow Valley Industrial Park, we've got that 70,000 one. One of the items we're going to talk about. One of the items we're going to talk about tonight is we're looking at doing some electrical upgrades there, and the numbers have come in much higher, and we're planning to use the American Recovery Funds to do that. But maybe we should look at some of this. That's a possibility as long as we're using it for Meadow Valley Industrial Park.
Absolutely.
That's a good idea.
Absolutely, you could use it specifically for that.
That's why we got you here, Tommy.
Okay, if I could, I'd like to just talk about the parks. I'll get to the other marijuana funds in a minute, but I want to go to page 93 for a minute. And I'm sorry, I've got about 5 more pages here, okay? Okay. This fund has a budget violation. Page 93, just a little more, it's about 2/3 of the way down the page. It shows total expenditures budgeted at $46,000, spent as $56,000. I look at this fund and I again believe that the budget needs to be looked at closer as it's put together this year, and also look at this year's budget, because when you look at actual expenditures, last year they were $65,000 total expenses. This year they're $56,000. There wasn't a budget violation last year because there were adjustments made by the end of the year to alleviate any of those problems. And so the fund has the money in it. There just needs to be some adjustments made at the end of the year when this situation arises, okay? I really don't see any areas in the budget here where there could be some significant adjustments as far as actual expenses are concerned, okay? Then page 95, I've pretty much already touched on this, but this is the room tax fund. I thought this was real positive from my perspective. At the top of the page, I look at room tax revenue. It stayed pretty strong, and there was a concern that it wouldn't because of COVID, but it stayed strong at $81,000 in the prior year and $83,000 for this year, so I think that's real positive, okay? Let's see, okay. Let's go ahead and go to page 113 now. And this is the debt service fund that is the additional fund that came into play with the marijuana licensing money. So this shows that there's $14,508 in the fund, no expenditures on page 113. As I recall, this fund is set up so that you can utilize this money to pay off utility debt or any type of debt that the town has, okay, at your discretion. So as the money grows in here, you have the ability to use that to make some payments in this year if you want to, however you want to do that, but just so you're aware that that money is sitting there in that fund, okay?
We had it planned to go to the highest
Yeah, I think
one first.
The sewer ponds or whatever, I think, is what we were planning on paying out first.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so, yeah, because this is the end of, this is June 30th, 2021, so we only started getting paid. It looks pretty low, but we only had been getting payments for a couple of months by this point, so they're a bit higher now at this point, but
I
yeah.
was gonna say, by now, we've accrued a lot more in there, but we do need to make an action item to get that money spent soon on one of our debts. Instead of letting it sit there, it needs to be spent.
So that, now I'm on page 116 and 117, and this is where we have capital project funds. So there are several capital project funds. I'll give you a minute to get there.
Make a comment really quick on that too, just going back to the debt service fund and all of the funds that are related to the cannabis tax. In talking with Stacy, I'm not sure how or when this happened. I think I mentioned this to the mayor earlier today. We were actually booking those the resolution or the ordinance that stated how we were going to split that up was not being followed. And so I believe that those adjustments are made in here.
And they're in here.
But that is something that we will have to fix in the current fiscal year as well, to then be able to say, here's how much money we actually have in there before we decide
To spend
to
it.
spend it. Yeah, just as a heads up.
The resolutions say 10%, 10%, 40, and 40. And the initial allocations weren't based on those percentages, but this financial reflects the 10, 10, 40, 40 that's in the resolutions. Okay? So, you know, there's 5 capital projects funds here. The Special Ad Valorem Fund is the fund that where you get money from the county every year. Okay, it's usually around $8,000. So in this particular year, there's on that, you see there's $8,400 that came in. There's expenditures of $12,800. And that $12,800 was used for handicap ramp, sidewalk, curb and gutter project. Okay? And then the capital expenditures fund, that's one of the other marijuana funds, okay? Streets, parks, and depot restoration, that's money that was transferred into here, I think, a year ago in 2020. It's money that's just sitting in the funds, and I honestly can't remember what fund that came from. I think it came from the general fund. But that money's in here for you to utilize for street projects, park projects, or depot restoration. Now, I know you've got the depot restoration grant in process right now. So if there's issues, I mean, not that $11,000 is much to $300,000 or $400,000 or $500,000, but if there were an issue, there's some money that you can use right there, okay? There's 2 other funds that I haven't really touched on, but there's the mosquito abatement fund. Its fund balance has stayed pretty consistent. And there's the building department fund, and it's funding itself, and there's no issue with the building department fund, okay? And there's just a couple other things that aren't in the financial I just want to touch on with you for just a minute, okay? During this last year, there was a jetter that was purchased for about $25,000. That got split between multiple funds, just so you're aware, okay? This financial reflects the starting of the architectural costs for the depot restoration. There's $123,000 of expense in here, mostly architectural driven. That actually ends up showing as construction in progress, an asset on the books of the city, okay? During this year too, there was also some expenditures of COVID money. There was some money you spent like for the system I'm looking at right now. There was money spent for touchless fountains and sinks and stuff throughout the city, okay? And then you got this, I'll call it ARP money, okay, some additional COVID money, about $722,000. So I just want to bring up an issue, and this is something that I believe that Stacy and Craig have talked about, but in the year we're in right now, 2022, if you spend $750,000 or more in federal money in a given year, it changes your audit requirements, okay? So you've got $722,000 of federal money that's COVID money. You have $500,000, 120-something of it spent in this audit year related to depot restoration, okay? And I don't think you have too much COVID money carryover, but our concern is, I just want to tell you this tonight, that if you spend more than $750,000 through the end of this year, June 30th, it raises your audit requirement, and it raises your paperwork requirement, okay? So we're going to follow up with Craig, all right? Because there's some policy and procedures you have to have in writing when you have federal money. And I don't know if you've been asked for this from any of the federal grantors. We want to make sure that you have that in place so that if you do reach the threshold that we don't have, I shouldn't say it that way, that you don't have any audit findings related to federal financial compliance with your grants, okay? I'm not sure how much of that $722,000 you still have left, if there's plans to spend the bulk of it before now and the end of the year.
We have about 420-ish.
Okay, then maybe you won't end up spending that. Maybe we won't get to that threshold.
Well,
You're
we've been talking about spending it, so.
Well, don't let what I'm saying not have you spend it. I just wanted you to be aware of that requirement because it just changes some things and the responsibilities for the city if you get over that level, okay? I know I've taken a lot of time. Those are the things I just felt that needed to be talked about. Any questions that you may have, I'm happy to go and answer them right now. There does need to be a follow-up within 60 days with the Department of Taxation to put a plan of corrective action together for the comments in here. I know we helped with a draft plan last year, and we can get with Craig and send him up a draft plan that he can manipulate, adjust in different ways, okay? Sometimes I use the, I get in these meetings, maybe use the wrong word, but you know what I'm trying to say. So that there can be a response to the Department of Taxation, okay? Thank you for your time. Any questions or any concerns that you want to talk about, or?
Thank you.
And for everything.
Thank you, and I really think you're in good hands, okay?
What I'm thinking. We've realized that.
Okay?
This made it much more apparent, like how much better we are off.
He's doing a terrific job for you.
Thanks, Tim.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
End the meeting on that note and go home.
Or fly a little higher or something, you know?
I'll keep it between the lines.
Signature sheets.
Oh, Sean's good. Sorry, Sean. Okay.
It's in this pile, yeah. And I don't sign it because it was.
Move on to item B, approve or deny advertising and request for bid for the Cali Depot exterior restoration.
I think, do we need to,
I think we need to approve that budget.
the audit, I think you need to approve the audit before we move on.
Okay,
I'll make a motion to approve the submission of the fiscal year 2020-21 audit report to the State Department of Taxation.
okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve our audit report for to the State Department of Taxation. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Now we'll move on. Advertising request for bid for the Cali Depot exterior restoration.
So you should have just a little
Packet, yeah.
ad there. Linda's got that ready, and
Thanks, Dan.
queued up to print tomorrow, as long as that's a go-ahead. That's just getting our bid out. So the work has been done, all the approvals that were required are ready, and now we just need to post that advertisement of the bids, to request bids.
And she's been in contact with Carmen on that, on those, some of those requirements that we had talked about at that meeting
Yep.
a while ago, I guess, a couple weeks back.
Yep, those and another gal,
So
Sue.
open the bids on March 17th at 5:30.
So when will this go? This will go public. We approve it tonight. It'll go public tomorrow and you'll post it, the
Yeah.
requirements, okay?
It'll be in the paper tomorrow.
Okay.
So just so you're aware, they'll be open at 6. The deadline's 5:30 on March 17th.
Yeah.
Okay.
I make a motion that we approve the request for bids.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to post this request for bids. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries.
So we have a meeting on St. Patrick's Day?
Just for you.
Oh, can.
Okay, item C, approve or deny Lincoln County Power District quote for upgrades to the Meadow Valley Industrial Park.
Okay, Grant got me some information on this from the Lincoln County Power District. We talked with them this week about lots of things. We've had a lot of meetings with the Lincoln County Power District this week, but we previously approved to spend some funds out of the American Recovery Funds, that, whatever those are. And we approved to spend up to $40,000 because the Power District had given us a soft estimate. They expected it would cost somewhere around the $30,000 range. We thought, well, it won't go over 40, we'll be good. Well, when they actually looked at doing the project and Kyle put the numbers together, they came back much higher than anticipated, like considerably higher than anticipated. The one switch that they had planned to put in, the cost of that switch alone is $34,500. So basically the way the Power District put it to us is if we wanted to farmer put this in and just get the power there temporarily and get it not as a permanent solution, we could get it done for as cheap as $45,531.49, which is obviously $5,000 more than what we originally anticipated and budgeted. And it's just the cost of materials are a lot higher than they anticipated at the Power District. But the proposal that we were planning to get, the price actually comes out to $80,031.49 for the Power District to do those power upgrades. But it's something that needs to be done. We've got to get the electricity there for Battleborn. And in order to do it the correct way and to make that line serviceable for anybody else that comes out there and for future expansion, we really need to go to the 80,000. And due to the information Dan presented tonight, I think we ought to look at splitting that up, maybe doing the original 40 out of ARP and then pulling the remaining balance out of the
Industrial.
Meadow Valley Industrial Special Fund. What questions do we want to look at?
That's agreeable.
How much money do we got in that Meadow Valley
It
Industrial?
had
deal?
71,000
Yeah,
in it.
so cash
The
balance.
rate, what's the rate of a procurement of that fund though? Like how long does it take to build up? Do we know?
I could be wrong here. But the revenue that's coming in from that, is that not the
That's
Pilot
the
Thomas?
Thomas Petroleum.
They're paying us $900 a month, I believe, in rent. So-
On the sale, did we put that money in the?
So you're talking like 10 grand a year.
Did
roughly.
the sell to Mr. Bourne, was that money in there as well? The 20-some
It
thousand?
should have been. My feeling is it probably should have been credited to this account.
I'll have to go back and look to see what they did with That would have been,
Yeah, I'm with Jamin on that, like, we shouldn't just, deplete the fund totally, but I mean, if we had like even 35,000 out of there, to kind of
So
cut it in
take the
half.
original 40 like we planned out of the ARP, so it doesn't affect that, and then take the remaining balance that we need to spend
Yeah,
out of
I
that.
mean, that would work, right? I mean, that's good news that we heard from Dan, so
I think you can probably split it however you want. If you want to go
40/40 or
50,
50/30.
50,000 from ARP or AR, yeah,
Okay.
ARP, and then the other
So-
30, whatever.
Well, I think if we left it like it was, we planned to spend 40,000 out of there originally, and then then we'd only be approving to spend out of the special fund
The other 40,
the remaining amount that we needed.
$40,031.49.
I'll make that motion.
Just, I have a question for Jamin real quick, what did they say?
I'm sorry,
Oh.
so there is a motion on the table, so it, either needs to be seconded or die for lack of second, and then we
Oh.
can discuss it.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, now we can discuss it again. Thanks.
Now you can ask your question.
I'm getting there. No, did they say anything why, maybe you already said it, but did they tell Grant or you why it came a little higher? Was it distance? Was it
So,
upgrading? Not just
it was-
upgrading, but was it?
The cost of that switch was the number one thing. They seriously thought
Yeah.
that switch was gonna be, in the past, what they had looked at, they thought it was gonna be a couple $1,000s. And
Yeah.
due to the changes and different things, when they got the quote back from ABB on the cost of the switch, they were like, holy cow, that switch is gonna be 35 grand. But in order for us to be able to meter that and us be able to charge for it, we have to have the switch to do it. Otherwise, the power district's gonna collect that income and those things, and so it's just something that,
Yeah, and I talked to Grant, cause I mean, not that I don't trust him, but I didn't want him to rake us over the coals on labor, but this labor cost is similar to what most, I mean, I'd looked into that when we were talking about that, so the labor is cheaper than I thought, but yeah, just that switch, so, okay.
yeah, the labor's actually a lot more affordable when you
comparable.
realize the amount that they're changing
Yeah.
to get it to happen in this proposal this way. So,
Okay.
We have a motion and a second to approve the expenditure of $80,031.49 with parts coming out of the ARP and the other part coming out of our fund that's building for the industrial park. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Approve or deny contracting with Sunrise Engineering for a master plan to the Meadow Valley Industrial Park.
okay, Grant sent me information on this just today as well and kind of went over it with me. And what it comes out to is, we included the Meadow Valley Industrial Park, and talking with Joe Phillips at Sunrise Engineering, he recommends that we just stick with the basic plan of basically, which is kind of what we all talked about, just taking an overview of the whole plot and putting where the roads are gonna be, putting those in place, and not worrying about doing the actual surveying, putting the stakes out on the ground, not doing the plans for what the curb and gutter looks like and what the road design's gonna be, not going to that level. So to do the basic plan is only gonna be about $6,000. Is all it's gonna cost to just put the basic plan out so that we know what it is. If we wanted to go to the detailed plan and put in design the potable water system, design the sanitary sewer system, the storm drain system, the electrical system, the telecommunications, and develop site plans that incorporate all of those things, that'd be 35 grand to go to those details. And so I don't think we know what the anticipated use is, so I think it'd be,
Yeah, so I kind of like the $6,000 idea, because what that will give us at that point, I mean, we already have Battleborn Butcher Block there, and they'll obviously fit around that. Then what we could do is we can ensure that any sale we do in the future complies with the plan, and then make the purchaser pay for those costs to do the surveying and anything else. That way, we're not, it looks like it's $35,000, I'm sorry, for the
Yeah.
staking and everything. So that way, we only take on 6,000, and again, as we do the surveying in the future, then we incorporate that in the cost of the sale to whoever wants to go out there. But ensure that whatever we do complies with the master plan. I think that makes sense. We can do it that way.
At least that get us started, get us in the right direction this time.
Any other questions?
The only other question is not on the agenda, but it's on this sheet, is about
The rodeo.
the rodeo grounds.
They were given, Sunrise Engineering gave an idea what it would take to do that, but we need to discuss the legalities of that and what our,
I'll talk about that in my report.
Okay. So I think it's a must that we do that. My only concern is we've approved already the road to be extended out further. If the photos that they got are gonna show that, or we can put that on there ourselves. It's only gonna be a few feet, I think.
yeah.
Well, I think what they have, they'll put the butcher block deal already on there. And whatever we decide, if we want to put that road in there wider or whatever it is, they will put that in there.
Okay.
Also.
All right.
How wide we want those roads and ensure that they can fit semi-trailers through and everything like that, so.
The next question behind this is where's the funding for this 6,000 coming from? Are we gonna use it as ARP funds, or are we gonna use it back out of the Meadow Valley Industrial, since it's a direct cost of Meadow Valley?
And that's where it should come from.
I think it should too.
So, I make a proposal that we approve this $6,000 plan with Sunrise Engineering and take it out of the Meadow Valley Industrial Park Fund.
Sounds good. I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve $6,000 for Sunrise Engineering to do aerial survey. And the funds will come out of the industrial park funds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, personnel reporting. City clerk's report.
I am gonna, well, I guess I'll give a little bit here. The audit, that was great to get that done, so we can move forward into the current fiscal year. Once we get some of the proposed adjustments in there and fully booked on our side, then we can roll forward all of the financial data into the current fiscal year, and that will allow us to start, at least get closer to what Dan was talking about, which is the monthly financial reports and getting those in front of you on a monthly basis so that you can see what's going on a regular basis instead of on a yearly basis. The main thing that I want to report on is, I guess the computer outage that we had. And that's something that I just wanted to bring up because I've been in talks with Joseph Lamb, who was over here helping me out, kind of saved my bacon to make sure that we had this meeting up and running. And also with CCS, and we've been on the phone with them for the last day and a half or two. There's some costs that are gonna come out of that. The short story is we gotta replace some equipment that is now broken. And the breakage of the equipment is what caused the whole system to shut down. It's patched together, but we've got it's gonna be about $7,000 in order to, it doesn't have to be all at one time, but I've got an email I'll read through just a few things. The summary of those costs is an audio-visual switch, which is kind of what started the problem. It's about $1,000 to replace that switch and get something that will still run all the equipment. It's a specialized switch that they have to run that. Then we've got a network switch, which is actually on our end, and that one is a little bit bigger for our stuff. That's $2,500. And then we're gonna replace, what we have in there now is, I don't know where it came from or who built them. They're nice shelves in there, but it doesn't work great for computer equipment. And so what what Joseph said, and he recommended that I reach out to Pool Pact. They'll come out and do a free assessment for us and basically tell us, they're gonna give us the recommendations that he's telling us we need to do, but at least we would have that from Pool Pact and a document that would show it as opposed to his word. That's what he told me to do, so that it wasn't necessarily just coming from him. But we would put in a rack to replace that shelving where all of the equipment could be mounted, and it would allow for easier accessibility and to scale that as we grow or make changes. It'll be a lot easier to run that equipment without causing any other problems. This is coming from a non-techie guy, so I don't know what I'm talking about, but there's some patch panels, audio-visual UPS, which is a surge protector so that if a surge is what caused this problem, we don't have that problem going forward. And then some labor and time setting up the rack. And then the other big piece of this that was a big concern for him was the security of the system. There's gonna be some cost in that because right now, without going into too many details, we have one Wi-Fi network. And that doesn't work out well when all of our information is there. So we wanna be able to split that up and secure our network a little better than what we have right now. So, any questions for me? There's probably a lot of other things we could talk about, but
We're looking at probably somewhere around $7,000 to replace that stuff.
yeah, to
in
do
the
all
near-
of,
Probably in the near future.
to
then.
do all that in the near future. And more immediate than all of it is the switch right here.
That's gonna be
$1,000
done right
switch.
away.
So,
Inclined to say get it done sooner, because I'm telling you what, the prices aren't getting any cheaper on anything, just like that switch. I mean, I just did another quote on an air conditioning unit that in 1 month's time, it jumped up $1,600. I mean, it's just 1 month's time, the prices are crazy right now, so
yeah.
I think we just get it done.
My question, and I'm learning this still, but I think I understand. At this point, I'm probably gonna need to get something specific on the agenda so that we can approve it, and then I'll move forward. So once you're comfortable with that, I'll put it on the agenda as soon as you'd like.
Yeah, next meeting even, just, tell us what you need and where to get it, and we'll, yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure we were aware how much it's gonna cost us, but,
Yeah.
so, wouldn't be no surprise. Okay. Anything else? Any questions for our clerk? Okay, Public Works Manager.
Okay, Grant sent me a council report. He also sent it to you. It should be in the packet with you guys. They obviously, this last week, they read the water meters. In the sewer department, Logan had a day that he took off and went up and helped the city of Pioche, because their jetter broke down. And they had a sewer problem backing up into somebody's basement, and so we just have provided some assistance to get them taken care of there, and they were gratefully appreciative of that. In the power department, they read a bunch of power meters, spent the time on that, and then we've spent a lot of time meeting with Lincoln County Power District, doing some planning on future electrical system upgrades and needs that we need there. And Grant spent a lot of time with them getting those plans put together, and so we appreciate him on that. They are also, the Lincoln County Power District let us know that they are planning to start this next week on the upgrades for the underground on Clark Street, behind the businesses there on Clover Street. So that's gonna be a big change happening there pretty soon. In the trash department, we have received those big roll-off bins. Anybody's been by the city shop over there, you've seen that the guys have been working hard on reinforcing those. And they're working on those. And they're now coming up with some ideas on how they're going to change the transfer station so that we're not beating those bins up as bad as we have been in the past. And so there's gonna be quite a big change down at the transfer station, which is obviously gonna take some work from our guys, but it's something that needs to happen so that we can protect our assets that we have. In the pool, this is kind of something new. It's a new thing that's being tried out a little bit, kind of starting to see some success with it. every year, at the end of the year, we used to just shut the pool down and throw a tarp over it. And then all the leaves and stuff that blow underneath there just become a nice cesspool. And when they get ready to open the pool at the beginning of the year, we spend a lot of hours cleaning it up and getting it ready so that we can use it again and getting it there. Well, this year, the way we're working it is they are keeping the chemical levels there, not keeping the heat on it and stuff, but keeping the pump circulating and keeping the leaves out of the system, out of there. And it's just taking a short amount of time to keep that there, but hopefully this year we'll see how that fares out and see how it should lessen the impact on that. But they did go over this week and make sure they got the leaves out and make sure the water was looking good, and spent a couple hours on that. If you've been out to the industrial park, you see that they've also cleaned up the burn pile at the industrial park, and they're working with Maggie Orr and NDF on restoring our tree city requirements and getting us back up to where we can be designated as an official tree city for the United States. So they've been busy over there, obviously.
Okay, any questions? Okay, discussion of legal matters. Mr. Katsky.
Things. First, the City Planning Commission approved the ordinance that was drafted last time regarding permitted uses, so that people don't have to come back for conditional use permits every time they want to run a business on a commercially zoned area. So at this point, we'll run the ordinance at paper for a period of 3 weeks, I believe it is. And then we'll get it before this board. It probably won't be until March 3rd, because we won't have time to run it 3 weeks before the March 17th meeting. So March 3rd, that'll be on the agenda for final approval, and a public hearing is, I think, what we need to do. Second thing, so we've talked a lot about building or appraisals for lots that are owned by the city of Caliente. As I was going through other ordinances for the past couple months, just researching different things, I actually came upon an ordinance that the city already passed back in 2015. It's ordinance number 182, 2017-01, which this, not necessarily the same people on this council, but this council already passed an ordinance stating that a list of qualified appraisers will be kept by a designated person or individual. It doesn't define who that designated individual or person is. I guess I assume at this point it would be the building inspector, I guess. I don't know. So I don't think the designated person needs to necessarily be like approved in a formal city council, but we have an ordinance there. So if we find two appraisers, if Ken knows of two appraisers who will come out here and do it, or an appraiser will come out and do it, and Ken knows the names of those individuals, let's just get these guys out if we want them to appraise the land so we can start listing these places for sale. So I noticed that on the Sunrise Engineering, they also talked about the rodeo grounds and doing that. If we want to go that route, we can do that first, or we can just sell that lot wholesale to a developer or whatever you guys want to do and allow them to do their engineering. It's whatever you guys want to do.
I think it'd be foolish to spend our money on something that we could essentially pass on to them, let them decide, and let them spend their money on it.
That's also true. So if we have people who are interested, I know that there's been interest in the old theater that we own, the rodeo grounds, whatever else. Actually, the industrial park, we've talked about this. We don't have to get an appraisal for that because that's part of a plan for the industrial park. So the same way we did with Battleborn Butcher Block, we just have to do it by resolution, I believe it was. But like I said, if someone has an appraiser in mind, that can be the designated person. And if someone's interested in buying, then let's go ahead and appraise these lands and start the sale process. Because appraisals are good for what, 6 months? Something along those lines? 6 months. So we can just do that, I guess. We don't have to reinvent the wheel at this point.
Well, and I think it's important, once we get them appraised, that we have some type of clause in there, once we get a buyer, we get the appraisal, we get the buyer, that there should be some clause of what they do with the city, I guess they're buying it, And so it's their prerogative, but I would hate to like say the old theater just be bought and then someone uses it for storage or something.
Yeah.
I mean,
So a couple things.
Okay.
It's not like we can just appraise it and enter into a contract with the buyer. It actually has to be a competitive
Yeah.
bidding process. I see what you're saying. There are ways to put restrictions on deeds. But I don't know. We can talk about that.
I mean, say the rodeo grounds sell, but they're not sold to a developer, or say a developer does buy it and then just turns it into like a cornfield or something. Like if we, I mean, you know what I mean? Like some type of, like some type of limitations of, hey, we could offer incentives, or we're selling this to you to develop. Well, is it gonna be multi-use housing? Is it single-family homes? I would hate to have someone just buy it and then just put like a junkyard there. You know what I mean? Or
Yeah, we can
something.
put CC&Rs on it.
Okay. And I know that's down the road. I just was thinking that,
Yeah.
It's a good idea.
Yeah, we can put deed restrictions on pieces of land, right? And so that's not a problem at all. The other thing is Councilman Rao has been attending planning commission meetings for the past couple weeks. How do I put this? There's been a lot of talk about a lot of changes to our zoning ordinances. What I don't want is I don't want such a comprehensive zoning ordinance that we become like Las Vegas, right? A city of 2 million people, I don't know, 1 million people. We don't need a comprehensive zoning ordinance, but there are some changes that they want to look at, want to explore. So I will be writing and drafting certain changes that we've talked about, mainly dealing with accessory units, buildings that have a kitchen, a bathroom, and a living quarter in it. As of right now, I discussed this with the Planning Commission yesterday, is that our zoning ordinance is actually, the definition of an accessory building is actually pretty broad, so it doesn't prohibit the construction of what I guess you'd call a casita, I guess. But there was discussion that they wanted more concrete definitions, I guess, of what can and can't be built. So that is something that they'll be exploring. Again, at the end of the day, the City Planning Commission is an advisory board to the City Council. They can only recommend changes to the ordinances to this council for final approval. So just to let you guys know, that's in the works. We're looking at that. Nothing is obviously set in stone at this point, but there has been a lot of discussion regarding casitas, especially in conjunction with tiny houses. It's been an interesting conversation, to say the least.
Can I ask you a question?
No?
I'm gonna do it anyway. When it comes to the planning, and this is my ignorance, but when it comes to the planning commission, if they ask you to do something as a contracted employee of the city, can you just say, no, I'm not doing that? Or do you have to do everything they ask you to do when we're paying you and they're just an advisory committee?
Right. So technically, any employee can say no to anyone, right? Like, it happens to bosses all the time, I'm sure. You're right. I could say no.
I'm not saying you should, I'm just asking if we're burning you out on a planning committee or commission requests, and I turn to come and ask you a question that I really need help with, and you say, I'm too busy working on.
So, fortunately for the city of Caliente, my fee is a flat fee, right? I don't charge you guys by the hour, which is honestly good for you guys in a lot of months, and it's good for me some months, right? And that's fine. That's just how it works out. So I'm happy to assist the Planning Commission whenever they think. Again, I don't necessarily believe that the city of Caliente needs a very comprehensive zoning ordinance at this time, especially given the 1,100 residents that live here. But maybe there are some things that we need to look into, and exploring this will help us find other things that maybe need to get fixed, right? Something else I'll say, and again, I'm not trying to point fingers to anyone, and it's been like a go Craig all night, but I'll just do another go Craig. During the past couple months, I've asked Craig for a number of documents that should have been somewhere in the city files. And those files have been strangely absent from the city files, which could create confusion later on. Craig and I have had a lot of discussions about this. I think I discussed with this council earlier is, I actually, and again, I'm not asking you to reimburse me for this, but I spent money out of my own office's pocket to categorize and to put in an Excel spreadsheet every ordinance and resolution that has been passed in the past 50 years, I believe, and I forgot to get that to you tonight, I'm sorry. And so for the documents that we already had, so I've digitized them, I've inputted them all into an Excel spreadsheet so they're easily viewable and they're quickly defined, and that's kind of how I found the appraisal ordinance that was passed back in 2015. So Craig and I have discussed a lot regarding administratively how documents need to be processed in City Hall. Just for example, the law enforcement contract, right? So that's a 3-year contract. The first 2 years was what, 170,000 or 180,000, I believe, and it goes back down to 100,000. Which is fine. Everyone in this building right now that's been a part of this knows exactly what that contract is because we were all part of it. As you guys as the city council knows, is sometimes there's high turnover, especially in the city clerk position. Craig's the 4th city clerk that I've worked with since I've been here, and I've not been here that long, 3.5 years now at this point. What becomes problematic is if, for whatever reason, the county can't find an executed copy of the contract, we can't find an executed copy of the contract, we have to go, and the city council changes, the city clerk changes, the city attorney changes, whatever, we don't have recorded documentation of what actually happened back in 2021 when we signed a law enforcement contract with Lincoln County. And it could end up in litigation, it could end up in just mass confusion, which some things have ended up in mass confusion. So, the thesis for this rant at this point right now is that Craig and I, and especially Craig being the go-to person at City Hall, has been diligent about ensuring that the city keep good and accurate records of anything and everything that happens in the city. Because again, I don't know what happened before, but I would email certain PDF documents that would need to be executed or signed. And I guess ignorantly, I assumed that City Hall would just keep a record of them. Now, fortunately, I keep a digital copy of everything. I don't usually delete anything I prepare for the city. And so I'm able to find digital copies of things that I prepared, but they're not necessarily legally executed copies. So it'll give us a good idea of what happened, but not necessarily what Mayor Rao signed 2 years ago. So we're coming up with that process. We're feeling our way through. Again, Craig has been swamped the past 6 months, but he's been really good to work with, and that is happening at this time. So that's all I've got to report, if you have any questions.
And if I might interject something here, I totally agree with what he said, especially on the ordinances. We've needed that ever since I've been around, and it has never happened. I mean, I have copies of ordinances that have been repealed. I don't know whether they're repealed or not.
Yes, so, sorry, and on that note, back in 2017 or 18, the city actually contracted with a company called Sterling Codifiers to revamp our whole coding system. Now, when I first got on, there was, I think one of you was on the board at that time, maybe two. Were you on the board at that time? Anyway, two of you, there was a lot that happened when the first 4 or 5 months that I became the city attorney. And I was attempting to work, again, I don't want to point fingers. We were actually pretty diligent, because what Sterling Codifiers did is they actually revamped everything with a bunch of questions that we were supposed to respond to them with. And for a while, I was getting with the city clerk, and we were going through the binder, the workbook, in order to get back to Sterling Codifiers. That fizzled out after a while because we were unable to meet for whatever reasons. And so I talked to Craig about this earlier today. Again, he's got a lot on his plate. He's going to find the contract that we signed with Sterling Codifiers, find the contact information, and see if that's still good at this point. Because Ken's right. We need the code the city code we have right now is from 1995, I think, or 93.
85.
Maybe you're right. Okay.
Yeah.
Sometime in the late 20th century. Which is fine, but the problem is we've passed a number of ordinances since then. And even, like, the one, like, original good copy that we have is even, like, not that great. It's been copied like 20 times, it seems like. I've looked at it before. That, the official code is really outdated. And I know you have a lot going on, so. And so, part of the whole process, again, is gonna be getting with Craig. And if Sterling Codifiers is still, that contract is still active, is going through that workbook, and ensuring that we get an updated code. So, that's part of it. It's just, there's a lot going on. And so you guys are lucky that I have a flat contract with you guys.
Exactly. Well, I think I speak for the council and the mayor when I say just appreciate your guys' efforts. And I told Craig that he's gonna be treading water for a while, but I think you got your head above water, but you're still gonna be kicking, so. I mean,
And Sterling Codifiers is how the county issued got their code revamped as well. So these guys are familiar with what's going on in Lincoln County.
So, yeah, a lot of governmental agencies in the state of Nevada use Sterling Codifiers, so. And we'll track down that contract and we'll figure it out, but we're going month by month now, so we'll see what happens. And that is all I have. That's the most I've talked in like.
It's a new record for you, yeah.
I think so.
That he hasn't answered. Okay, we'll move on. Building inspector's report.
You all have one copy of my report. Battleborn meets, that's the only activity has been taken by this council, so you're on top of that. 850 Holt Avenue, which is the house that Kevin Roberts is building over there on Holt. I issued an occupancy certificate for it. Spring Heights is the foam house up here, and they're still working on the interior of it. 270 Main Street is, one of these days they'll be finished with that, but it is moving real swift. Many Street Apartments, there's been no change on it. The last time I talked to them, the ownership of the apartments themselves was supposed to go through escrow on the 17th of this month. I text Stuart Boyd, representing the owners today, and I hadn't gotten a response from him. As far as I know, it's still on the 17th of this month. So it told me originally that as soon as that ownership is in their hand, then they're gonna start work. They're all ready to go. Clover Creek, that's still stumbling along. It shouldn't done anything yet. Tiny homes, Franklin covered that pretty good. We are trying to get those plans updated and brought to you guys. I thought maybe we could get it by the next meeting, but the 3rd of March sounds like when it's gonna happen. The storage container projects, have tried to visit with everybody on that list. We have at least one of them right now that is claiming that his container units were in place before the 2006 code change, ordinance change. So that's it. Well, there is one other thing. I got an email today from ISO, which is Insurance Services Office. And the last one of these I did, it's a form that they have you fill out rating the fire department, the building department, and everything else. I have my doubts about why we need to do that. I'm filling out the paperwork on it now. It's a 5-page report that goes into great detail. It looks to me like a lot of the information they should already have. But I'm filling it out, so we'll see what it takes. And really, that's all I've got, unless somebody's got some questions.
Questions? Okay, thank you. All right, discussion of issues related to public safety. Guess we don't have anybody here for that. Any comments on that? Okay. Discussion of council members' responsibilities, parks and beautification. Mr. Fitzsimons.
Nothing much to report, Mayor and Council. Our next meeting will be Tuesday, February 15th. So we haven't had a meeting since our last city council meeting. We did get the island decorated with some Valentine themed lights, and there'll be green ones going up for the month of March for St. Patrick's Day. I got nothing else to report on that.
Okay. Any questions for Sean? Okay. Planning and development, Tommy.
All right, the city attorney reported on most of that. Most of the discussion was on the proposed revisions of the city code in regards to zoning. Like he mentioned, about every 2 or 3 months, I have to mention to the planning commission that this is not Las Vegas or Southern California. But anyway, I appreciate the work that they're doing, and I don't have anything else to report. I did contact Carson City twice today, and I still haven't got an answer back in regards to if they have let that bid out for the bicycle and walking path to Kershaw. Nothing official yet.
Okay, any questions for Tommy? Okay, tourism, Boxcar Museum, Laveri, is he online? No. Okay, do we have anything about, to do with that? Okay, we'll move on to public utilities, and he's already
Leave the
given his
microphone
report.
up, so I don't have much more to say.
Okay, any questions for Jamin?
I will make just one quick comment, I forgot, but we did, I asked Charlie to send out an email to get set up for that LCAT request that we discussed last meeting on having a room tax donation for the $3,700. So we're just waiting for a response on that. Joe probably would have mentioned that if he had been here, so.
Okay, my report, I don't have a lot. I think you got some answers tonight on I keep commenting on how well our clerk's doing, and I think we got our auditor's confirmation on that today. So I think we're doing well. Okay, public comment. Do we have any public comment? Consideration, anybody else? Please keep your comments down to 3 minutes. No comments? Okay. Schedule a date and review agenda topics.
February 17th will be our next, unless there's a reason not to do it that day. 6 o'clock right here. I've got on the agenda, as of right now, I've got a few other items in my office that will be on there, but we'll get the 7,000 for the network upgrades on there for approval. And then 2 meetings from now, we'll make sure that we've done what we need to get that conditional use permit ordinance piece back on here. Anything else? I know there will be other stuff come up, so just keep me posted.
Okay, we have nothing else. Adjourn this meeting. That was your.
Say that again, I'm sorry.